This is Inside Duco, the business of boxing. I'm Steve Orsbourn, video producer for the New Zealand Herald. Back in 2000, I lived and filmed in the Las Vegas boxing camp with David Tua and Kevin Barry before the heavyweight title fight against Lennox Lewis. I hadn't seen Kevin Barry since the night of Tua's loss. I saw a lot and learnt a lot about the business of boxing, in and outside the ring. That's why I'm interested in the story behind the Duco boys, the verbose Dean Lonergan.
They got paid more money to fight down here in New Zealand.
And the reclusive David Higgins.
The Tua Cameron fight was the first major boxing event.
Because it is a big risk with Joseph in the respect of he hadn't reached his potential as an amateur following the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games. He hasn't got medals behind him. He hasn't won those things. So why, has he got the knockout punch? Has he got the, can he last it through? Why you spent 200k to get to zero?
In my opinion, if we had got hold of Joseph 3 years ago, we weren't going down this path then. Joseph would have won a gold medal at the Olympics. Just my opinion, talking to Kevin Barry, who knows these things. You know, Kevin himself was a silver medalist. Joseph's come on, he was in kindergarten when it came to boxing in New Zealand. Sparring was really hard to get. Quality of coaching that we're now getting didn't exist and doesn't exist.
And does he have a heavyweight punch?
His punch is a work in progress. I will be working hard to develop Joseph Parker's power, to increase it from what he's shown in his first 4 fights. And it's just a transition from amateur to professional boxing. Part of my coaching will be getting him to sit down on his punches, to step with his power hand, his right hand, and to pull the explosive power from his legs to his back through his arms, to enabling him to punch harder.
He's essentially a very good, fast counter-puncher, really. Now, he's got to change that a little bit, and that's perhaps his weakness as an amateur, that he was essentially a counter-puncher.
Part of it, in terms of Joseph and boxing, is chasing the dream. You know, we had a taste promoting David Tua with Shane Cameron. It was a huge event. We promoted Shane Cameron and backed him when he was at a low, and he came out and knocked out Monty Barrett and got back on a high and ended up getting a title shot. So Dean and I have played a major role with both Tua and Cameron in recent times, backing them, paying them big money, giving them opportunities, but we've had no long-term commitment from those boxers. So Dean and I said, wouldn't it be great to find a young kid who has similar potential and work with them right through, get it right at the very beginning? Wouldn't it be great to work with a boxer who retires a wealthy man?
There always seems to be a sad story at the end of a boxer-trainer relationship. Very few get through to the end,
right,
both being happy.
No, that's right, and there are so many terrible stories. You know, there are so many, like, you know, the Mike Tyson earning 300 million and being broke. Vander Holyfield, 250 million, now he's bankrupt, he loses his house, and, you know, and is still fighting at the age of 50, just recently retired. You know, these stories are terrible, gut-wrenching stories.
What are the safeguards? What is in it for Joseph Parker, and what is his future? You're going to safeguard with the money that comes in? How's that work?
If Joseph wasn't with us right now, he'd still be training in South Auckland. He'd be making probably no more than $500 a fight, and he would have none.
He wouldn't be in shape.
No opportunity of ever doing what he's about to do, simply because he's not having the instruction in the background. Now, he could have gone to an Aussie promoter. They're not exactly littered. There's only one guy who has taken a fighter all the way to a legitimate world title fight, not some bunny that no one knows, and that was Kevin Barry and David Tua. Now, they made some mistakes collectively along the way. And I think that, you know, David and myself and Kevin and Joseph are going to be benefactors of those mistakes. Also, we were adamant that Joseph have very, very good advice around him. And they've got Bill Wilson, former Supreme Court Justice, gives Joseph legal advice. We certainly wanted to have Bob Jones involved on a long-term basis. You know, Bob chose to exit. But also there's a white knight for the Shareholders Association called Bruce Shepherd. Bruce Shepherd's going to be helping Joseph out as well as part of your advisory group. So they're getting fantastic advice. And at the end of the day, David's job, mine, is to do two things. One is to make sure that he's trained, fed and watered properly, basically, and he comes to every single fight. And two, what we do is negotiate a purse with him when he's on our card, and we pay him the money. What he does with that money after that is up to him. We have no further involvement.
In certain jurisdictions like the United States, it's illegal to be the promoter and the manager. And we've been careful. In New Zealand, you can do it. I think Ken Rainsfield does it with Shane Cameron. It's not something we want to do because it opens up moral hazards and conflicts of interest.
So what did happen to change the charge of Joseph Parker with Sir Robert? What happened? Was it a case of the person paying the pipe and not allowed to call the tune? How did it work?
Well, the truth of the matter is Sonny Bill Williams had a fight with Francois Botha, turned out to be a bit of a debacle, and as a result, Francois Botha became one of the biggest household names in New Zealand at the time. Huge name. Everyone thought he was robbed, and he probably was. He was going on to win that fight. So Dean suggested, and I agreed, that Botha might make sense as an opponent for Joseph on several levels. And I think Bob Jones would hopefully agree that one, a Botha fight would put Joseph's profile through the roof. Two, a Botha fight would enable Joseph to earn 10 times more money. And unlike Bob, Joseph could do with a payday. You know, Bob's all right financially, but Joseph fights to make money, so it enables him to be paid more. Three, Dean and I have invested a few $100K, and a Botha fight would enable us to hopefully make some return or at least cover some costs. And fourth, Botha's a step up from allegedly the bums he'd been fighting, and guys durable. Like Tutaki, and more durable, and that's what Bob wanted. And then finally, we think Botha's beatable. So Botha ticks every box, every box. Bob's argument was that he criticised Sonny Bill for fighting Botha, and he thought the media might call him a hypocrite if he was then involved in Joseph fighting Botha, and that was Bob's priority. He didn't want to be called a hypocrite by the media, so he kicked up a fuss and said he'd exit if we chose Botha. We then took our time and said we'd discuss it with Joseph. We did. Joseph and the family were incredibly excited. Joseph had a glint in his eye and said he wanted that fight.
When they brought me on board, Bob wasn't part of the equation. My first introduction to Joseph Parker was through Bob Jones. You know, Bob brought him to my attention. Bob actually said to me, you know, one, he wanted me to prepare him for the Olympics, which didn't happen, but two is when he turned professional, he asked me that him and I would manage him together.
When I saw him in the Commonwealth Games in India, he was sensational in his first bout against the top North American fighter. A mature man, rough, tough, a black man from Canada. He was just brilliant. And I thought, gosh, I let it be known I would be interested in sponsoring him, and so he could box full time. So who knows where he could go. But, you know, we're not going to be foolish, but we're not going to be silly either. We're not going to sort of present rubbish, you know, with the Sonny Bill Williams sort of stuff. But that's always a delicate thing, matchmaking.
You know, he's usually right, but not always. And so he chose to exit, and we move on.
Because the pushback to what you've just said is that this fight is too early in his career, that could do more damage than good, and that perhaps you are, for the reasons, 5 reasons, are looking for your return quicker, that perhaps you're looking for him to earn his reputation rather than before earning his, you know, his fight card.
So we invest a few $100K, and then early in a 6-year arrangement, we shoot ourselves in the foot, is what you're suggesting. Why would we do that? Like, no one's got more to lose than us.
Both are lost to Sonny Bill Williams, so I can't really see him troubling Joseph Parker. So, you know, it's, you know, possibly if I was guiding Joseph, I probably wouldn't put him into that, you know, that sort of fight just yet, but, you know, that's not my decision, that's their decision.
And in my opinion, and Dave agrees, this is a perfect fight for a whole lot of reasons, but first and foremost, it's a great fight because we think both is durable. Joseph needs to step up and go rounds, and he needs to be in against experience. If he keeps knocking over guys in 1, 2 and 3 rounds, there's no learning experience. If he knocks over both in 1, 2 or 3 rounds, that's going to be a magnificent victory and shows just how far Joseph Parker has come. I would not have confidence of Joseph Parker going into this fight if we didn't have him in Las Vegas like we have done for the last 8 weeks. But because we've gone from kindergarten in New Zealand to what I think is boxing university in the States, and the level of sparring Joseph's getting, the level of fitness he's attaining, and also just how good the tuition is, I'm really confident.
What's Kevin Barry telling you about his fighting?
I can't say too much, but I can tell you this. Kevin thinks that everything's starting to really come together.
Well, the thing that I will be instructing Joseph, that Joseph's a big man and I want him to fight like a big man. I don't want him to fight in close. He doesn't need to be 2 feet away from his opponent. He needs to be 5 feet away where he's controlling the zone. Own the zone is what I said to him on Monday.
On the advice of Kevin, we ended up doing a fight in LA. We found ourselves a durable opponent, and it turned out absolutely perfect. So Kevin Barry, after that fight, because you know he learned a lot about Joseph going into that fight, he's saying after that fight, this boy's very, very good. Now it's too early to start making any predictions, but I can promise you this, someone who knows the fight game, and Kevin Barry is telling us that this boy's good.
Does he have a knockout punch yet?
Did Muhammad Ali have a knockout punch? Is the honest truth? If you have a look at Joe Frazier, he had a fantastic left hook, but he was knocking over about, you know, he'd throw 10, 15 punches. David Tua, he's got a knockout punch, but correct me if I'm wrong, he landed 20 punches on Shane Cameron to put him down, going back 3 or 4 years ago. Do we have to have one knockout punch? It'd be nice. Has he got one yet? We'll wait and see.
I think every weight,
on the chin, he will.
Every heavyweight does. So if Joseph throws a perfect punch on the button, he's going to knock someone out. He's got the weight, he's got the speed. It's early days in his career, and the opponents he's fought so far have fallen over. Like, I think he's straight TKOs or KOs. So does that answer the question? Has he had a points victory? Maybe perhaps Bryce Ratani-Ko recently was points, but that was what we wanted. Before Botha, because Botha's 8 rounds and Joseph had only gone 3 or 4 to date, we actually wanted him to go 6 rounds, so he carefully chose an opponent who had a granite chin. I mean, Ratani-Ko was sparring Mark Hunt, who's a very hard puncher, and the idea was to go some rounds, and so couldn't have been a better outcome up there in Vegas.
He beats Botha, or does creditably well. Does that make him, in your eyes, worthy of the pay-per-view audience in the States? Has he been groomed to be part of the undercards, to be moving up there? Is this where the business plan can perhaps work?
Right now, we're grooming him to be part of New Zealand pay-per-view theatre, for want of a better term. After this, he'll be on the David Tua undercard, and then later in the year, we've definitely probably put him on Fight for Life, and prior to that, we might have another standalone Joseph Parker fight. In the very near future, absolutely, he might move into the overseas markets, and you know, Dave and myself, we've got a lot of talking to do. But right now, all we care about is A, how he goes in the Botha fight, and B, the tuition he's getting from Kevin Barry.
Another quiet Samoan in the family. What have you learned? What's going to change?
Nothing's going to change. I'm the same person today. I operate my life the same today as I did 20 years ago. The main thing was, you know, when I first presented this opportunity to my wife, she said to me, "Kevin, do you really want to go through this again?" And I said to her, "Yes, I feel like I need the challenge." And like, you can't judge by culture, you have to judge by individuals. And I promised Joseph, and I promised his parents, that, you know, I would become Joseph's guardian. The minute he leaves New Zealand, I will treat him like my own son. He will become a member of my family, and I will do everything in my power to make him the best boxer that he can possibly be.